My mother-in-law looked my crying 9-year-old daughter straight in the eye and said the cruelest words I've ever heard at a child's birthday party. What happened 4 hours later when she opened her mailbox made the entire neighborhood witness karma in action. 20 kids watched my daughter's heart break in real time, but by sunset, the whole town would know exactly what kind of grandmother Beatrice Hartley really was. I'm Victoria, and I need to tell you what happened at my daughter Emma's 9th birthday party last Saturday. Emma is my whole world, a freckle-faced little girl who rescues worms from sidewalks and shares her lunch money with kids who forget theirs. My mother-in-law Beatrice is 64 years old, drives a Lincoln Town car, and serves on 3 charity boards. She also happens to be the kind of grandmother who keeps score between her grandchildren, like she's running a competition only she knows about. Then there's Meredith, my niece, Beatrice's other granddaughter, 11 years old, straight A's, first violin in the youth orchestra, the child who can do no wrong in Beatrice's eyes, the golden grandchild who gets European vacations while Emma gets drugstore toys. But this story isn't really about playing favorites. It's about the moment a grown woman looked at a child's birthday cake and decided to use it as a weapon. It's about how I didn't scream, didn't fight, didn't make a scene. I just made one calculated phone call that brought Beatrice's perfect world crashing down in front of a news crew, a driveway full of neighbors, and a little girl who finally understood she was worth fighting for. The birthday cake said, "Happy Birthday, Meredith," in purple frosting. My daughter's name is Emma, and when I tell you what Beatrice said next, you'll understand why half the parents at that party recorded what happened 4 hours later when karma came calling at exactly 3:47 in the afternoon. Emma had been counting down to her 9th birthday for 3 months. She'd made a paper chain with 90 links, tearing one off each morning at breakfast while eating her scrambled eggs. "Mom, only 7 more days until my rainbow unicorn cake," she'd announce, her freckled face glowing with anticipation. She'd drawn pictures of that cake at least 50 times, each version more elaborate than the last, with golden horns and flowing rainbow manes that covered entire sheets of construction paper. My husband Dennis and I had planned everything meticulously. We sent invitations 3 weeks in advance to 20 kids from her 3rd grade class at Riverside Elementary. The backyard was transformed into what Emma called unicorn paradise, with pastel balloons tied to every fence post, twinkling lights strung between the oak trees, and a homemade pin the horn on the unicorn game I'd spent 2 nights painting. Emma had specifically requested a rainbow unicorn cake from Fratelli's Bakery, the fancy place downtown that required ordering 3 weeks in advance and a $50 deposit just to reserve your date. "Can we afford Fratelli's?" Dennis had asked quietly one evening after Emma went to bed. We both knew money was tight after his hours got cut at the warehouse, but I'd picked up extra shifts at the dental office where I worked as a hygienist, staying late to clean rooms and file insurance claims. This was Emma's golden birthday, turning 9 on the 9th, and she'd never asked for anything extravagant before. My mother-in-law Beatrice had called 2 weeks before the party with her typical grand gesture announcement. "I insist on picking up the cake," she'd declared, not asked in that voice that brooked no argument. "Let me contribute something special for my granddaughter." I should have known better. I should have recognized the trap. Beatrice had a long history of showing preference for Meredith, my brother-in-law Roger's daughter. At last Christmas, Meredith unwrapped a cashmere sweater from Nordstrom, while Emma got a generic Barbie from the pharmacy discount bin. When Meredith performed at her piano recitals, Beatrice sat front row center with a bouquet of roses. When Emma had her art show at school, Beatrice didn't even show up, claiming she had a dental appointment that couldn't be rescheduled. "She means well," Dennis would always say, trying to keep peace in the family. His mother had been different when his father was alive, he insisted. Thomas Hartley had been the warm one, the grandfather who would have loved both girls equally. But Thomas died when Emma was 2, and since then, Beatrice had grown colder, more calculating, as if love was a finite resource she had to ration carefully. The morning of the party, our house buzzed with nervous energy. Emma wore her favorite purple dress, the one with sparkles sewn into the tulle that caught the light when she moved. She'd picked it out specially for today, saving her allowance for 2 months to buy the matching purple headband with the silk flower. "Do you think Grandma B will like my dress?" she asked, twirling in front of the hallway mirror, watching the sparkles dance. My heart clenched at the question. Even at 9, Emma sensed she had to work harder for her grandmother's approval. She didn't understand why Grandma B always seemed more excited to see Meredith, why Meredith's school reports were framed on Beatrice's mantle, while Emma's perfect attendance certificate wasn't even mentioned. "You look absolutely perfect, sweetheart," I told her, fixing the flower in her headband. "Like a princess." "Like a unicorn princess," she corrected me with a giggle, and for a moment she was just a little girl excited about her birthday, not a child carrying the weight of unearned inadequacy. Dennis had been up since dawn, setting up tables in the backyard, arranging chairs, testing all the strings of lights twice to make sure they worked. His brother Roger had promised to come early to help, but called last minute saying, "Meredith had a violin lesson that ran long." Of course she did. Everything in Roger's family revolved around Meredith's accomplishments, her schedules, her needs. By noon, the house smelled like vanilla frosting from the cupcakes I'd made as party favors, each one topped with a tiny plastic unicorn Emma and I had picked out together at the craft store. The gift table was ready, the games were set up, and Emma stood at the front window, bouncing on her toes, waiting for the first guests to arrive. "Mom, do you think everyone will come?" she asked, a hint of worry creeping into her voice. "Everyone RSVP'd? Yes, baby. They'll all be here." She smiled then. That pure, uncomplicated smile that 9-year-olds still have before the world teaches them to guard their joy. In exactly 2 hours, that smile would disappear completely. The party was in full swing when Beatrice arrived at 2 o'clock sharp, 45 minutes late. Kids were scattered across the backyard playing freeze tag while parents chatted over lemonade and finger sandwiches. Emma had just won the 3-legged race with her best friend Zoe, and her face was flushed with happiness and exertion. The moment she saw her grandmother's Lincoln Town car pull into the driveway, she ran toward the house, her purple dress flying behind her. "Grandma B brought my cake," she shouted to anyone who would listen. "My special unicorn cake is here." Beatrice emerged from her car wearing her typical Saturday afternoon outfit. Pressed beige slacks, a coral blouse with pearl buttons, and her signature disapproving expression. She retrieved the large white bakery box from the back seat, holding it away from her body like it might contaminate her clothes. "Traffic was absolutely horrible," she announced as she walked through the back gate, not bothering to greet Emma, who stood eagerly beside her. "You really should have chosen a bakery closer to civilization, Victoria, making me drive all the way downtown on a Saturday." I bit my tongue and took the box from her hands. "Thank you for picking it up, Beatrice. Emma's been so excited." "Can I see it, Mom? Can I see my unicorn?" Emma bounced on her toes, trying to peek around me as I set the box on the kitchen counter. Her friends had started gathering at the sliding glass door, noses pressed against the screen, equally eager to see the famous Fratelli's cake Emma had been talking about for weeks. I carefully opened the white box, lifting the lid to reveal what should have been Emma's dream cake. And in many ways, it was exactly what we'd ordered. The white fondant was smooth as silk, the golden horn spiraled perfectly, and the rainbow mane cascaded down the sides in waves of purple, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. It was magnificent, but across the top, in elegant purple cursive letters, it read, "Happy Birthday, Meredith." The kitchen went silent. Emma's face crumbled like a sandcastle hit by a wave. "That's not my name." I stared at the cake, then at Beatrice, my mind trying to process what I was seeing. There must be some mistake. This says Meredith. Beatrice peered over my shoulder and laughed. Not a nervous laugh or an embarrassed laugh, but a genuine, amused laugh, like someone had told a particularly clever joke. Oh dear, I must have mixed up my granddaughters when I placed the order. She turned to Emma with a casual shrug that made my blood start to simmer. Oops, wrong granddaughter. Though honestly, Meredith deserves a cake more anyway. She just won first place at the state science fair. What have you done lately, Emma? The words hung in the air like poison. Emma's friend Zoe gasped audibly. 2 mothers who'd been refilling their punch cups at the kitchen island stood frozen. Dennis, who must have sensed disaster from the sudden quiet, appeared in the doorway still holding the bubble machine he'd been operating for the younger kids. "But it's my birthday, Grandma B," Emma whispered, her voice so small it barely carried across the kitchen. "Today is my special day." "Oh, don't be so dramatic," Beatrice waved her hand dismissively, her wedding ring catching the light. "It's just a name on a cake. The cake still tastes the same. You children get so worked up over nothing." "You think Meredith deserves my birthday cake more than me?" Emma's eyes were filling with tears now, her bottom lip trembling. "Well, achievements should be celebrated, shouldn't they?" Beatrice pulled out a kitchen chair and sat down, crossing her legs like she was settling in for afternoon tea. "When you accomplish something noteworthy, then we can make a fuss. Participation ribbons from field day don't count, dear. Meredith just got accepted into the advanced mathematics program. She's actually going somewhere in life." Emma's friend Zoe stepped backward. Mrs. Peterson from down the street covered her mouth with her hand. Dennis dropped the bubble machine, and it clattered against the doorframe, sending a stream of bubbles floating inappropriately through the tension-filled kitchen. "Mom, why would you say that?" Dennis finally found his voice, but Beatrice just looked at him with that practiced expression of hers, the one that suggested everyone else was being unreasonable. "I'm just being honest, Dennis. Children need to learn that the world rewards excellence, not mediocrity." Emma didn't run immediately. She stood there for 5 more seconds, looking at the beautiful cake with the wrong name, then at her grandmother's impassive face, then at me. In her eyes, I saw a question she was too young to have to ask. Why am I not enough? Then she ran, her purple dress fluttering behind her like broken wings, her new birthday shoes clicking against the hardwood as she raced upstairs. Her bedroom door slammed with such force that the kitchen windows rattled. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene in front of the children who stood frozen in our backyard, party hats askew, wondering why the birthday girl had disappeared. I simply looked at Dennis and said in my calmest voice, "Please serve the ice cream sundaes to the kids. Tell them Emma will be back soon. I'll handle this." Dennis knew that tone. It was the same voice I'd used when his brother Roger had tried to exclude us from their father's funeral planning, the same voice I'd used when the school tried to skip Emma for the gifted program despite her qualifying scores. It was my dangerous voice, the one that meant I was done playing nice. Beatrice had already made her way outside, settling into a lawn chair with a glass of lemonade, as if she hadn't just emotionally devastated a 9-year-old child. She was chatting with Mrs. Chen about the spring charity auction, gesturing with her manicured hands, playing the role of devoted grandmother at her granddaughter's party. The sight of her casual cruelty made my decision crystal clear. I walked past the party guests to the quiet corner of our yard, near the garden shed where Emma and I had planted sunflowers last month. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Roger's number. He answered on the second ring, his voice cheerful and oblivious. "Hey Vic, how's Emma's party going? Sorry we're running late. Meredith's violin teacher wanted to discuss her solo for the spring concert." "Roger, I need you to listen very carefully and not interrupt," I said, keeping my voice low but firm. "Is everything okay? You sound strange." "Your mother just deliberately ordered a cake with Meredith's name for Emma's birthday, then told my 9-year-old daughter that Meredith deserves a cake more because she's actually accomplished something. Emma's sobbing in her room while 20 kids wonder where the birthday girl went." The silence on the other end stretched for 10 seconds. Then, "She did what?" "There's more you need to know, Roger. Remember last month when your mother asked me to witness her will update since I'm a notary? She had me make official copies for her files. Well, I made copies for myself, too, legal copies, including the letter she attached explaining why she feels one granddaughter is more worthy of an inheritance than the other. Victoria, that's private family business. Not when it affects my daughter. The letter explicitly states that Emma lacks the ambition and intelligence to properly manage family assets, while Meredith shows real promise. Your mother wrote, and I quote from memory, that Emma is sweet but simple, unlikely to amount to anything significant. Roger's breathing grew heavier. You shouldn't have copied those documents. I had every legal right as the notary. But here's what you need to know. I have 3 envelopes sitting on my desk right now. One is addressed to Meredith's school, specifically to Mrs. Adamson, who I believe is overseeing Meredith's student council campaign next week. Her platform is about kindness and inclusion, right? Imagine how that'll play when they read about Grandma's views on worthiness. You wouldn't dare. The second envelope is for your country club, where Beatrice just became board president. They pride themselves on family values and community support. I wonder how they'll feel about her letter describing how bloodlines and genetics determine a child's worth. The third is for the newspaper's human interest editor, who happens to be my cousin Janet's best friend from college. Victoria, please. This would destroy her reputation. The way she's destroying my daughter's self-worth, I'm holding all 3 envelopes right now, Roger. Stamps attached. Your mother has exactly 4 hours to make this right, or they go in the mail. And I mean really make it right, not some half-hearted apology. What do you want? A genuine apology to Emma in front of all the party guests, a real birthday cake from Fratelli's with Emma's name on it. And the education trust fund she set up for Meredith, she creates an identical one for Emma with the paperwork signed today. The trust fund is already established. That would cost thousands in legal fees to replicate. Then she better call her lawyer fast. Oh, and Roger, that education trust funded by the rental income from the property on Maple Street, Dennis's name is still on that deed from when his father passed. Your mother never completed the full transfer. Our lawyer says that makes things very interesting from a legal standpoint. We could tie that property up in court for years. This is extortion. This is a mother protecting her child from emotional abuse. 4 hours, Roger, starting now. It's 2:15. At 6:15, I walk to the corner mailbox. And before you think about calling Dennis to override me, remember that he just watched his mother make his daughter cry on her birthday. He's angrier than I am. I'm the one showing restraint. At exactly 5:47 p.m., 3.5 hours after my phone call to Roger, Beatrice's Lincoln Town car screeched into our driveway with such speed that she nearly clipped our mailbox. The party had dwindled to just a few close friends and their parents who'd stayed to help clean up and comfort Emma, who had finally rejoined the party but remained subdued. Her sparkle dimmed. She was helping her friend Zoe make friendship bracelets at the picnic table when her grandmother's car appeared. Beatrice emerged from the driver's seat carrying a massive cake box from Fratelli's, twice the size of the original, and 2 shopping bags from Woodland Toys, the expensive toy store downtown that sold handcrafted wooden toys and educational games from Europe. Her face was flushed, her usually perfect hair slightly disheveled, and her coral blouse had a coffee stain on the sleeve. But what happened next made everyone stop what they were doing. A white van with Channel 7 News painted on the side pulled up behind her. Roger stepped out from the passenger side with a camera crew following behind him. He jogged over to me while the news team gathered their equipment. Mom found out you called the news station about their Hometown Heroes segment, he whispered urgently. She thinks Emma is being featured for her volunteer work at the animal shelter. She called them herself to make sure they got here in time. I hadn't called any news station, but I kept my face neutral as understanding dawned. Roger had orchestrated this himself, either as insurance or revenge, maybe both. Beatrice strutted up to the party area, her arms full of gifts, beaming at the cameras with her politician's smile. I'm here to celebrate my amazing granddaughter, Emma, she announced loudly enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. I've brought her special cake and presents because she deserves the absolute best. The reporter, a young woman with perfectly styled blonde hair, approached with her microphone. Mrs. Hartley, we understand you have something special to share about your granddaughter? Beatrice set down the cake and bags, then clasped her hands together like she was about to give a speech at one of her charity functions. Oh yes, Emma is extraordinary. She volunteers every weekend at the Riverside Animal Shelter, reading to the dogs to keep them calm. She helps our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Franklin, with her groceries every Tuesday. She's the kindest, most generous child I know. Emma had stood up from the picnic table, her eyes wide with confusion. The other children gathered closer, drawn by the camera crew and the spectacle. That's why, Beatrice continued, her voice carrying across the yard, I've decided to announce, here at her birthday party, that I'm creating an education fund in her name. $25,000 for her future, because every child deserves to have their dreams supported. The reporter smiled and turned the microphone toward Emma. Emma, what do you think about your grandmother's generous gift? Before Emma could answer, the reporter's phone buzzed with an incoming message. She glanced at it, then did a double take, reading more carefully. Her professional smile faltered, replaced by something sharper, more interested. Mrs. Hartley, she said slowly, turning back to Beatrice, I'm actually getting word from my producer about some documents that were just delivered to our station. Several documents, actually, including a letter in your handwriting about why some grandchildren are more, quote, worthy than others. Beatrice's face drained of color so fast I thought she might faint. What? No, that's not possible. Who would send such a thing? The reporter continued, reading from her phone screen. It says here that earlier today you deliberately ordered the wrong name on your granddaughter's birthday cake and then told her that her cousin Meredith deserves a cake more because she's actually accomplished something. The murmuring started immediately. Mrs. Peterson pulled out her phone and started recording. 2 other mothers did the same. The camera crew, sensing blood in the water, moved in closer. That's a misunderstanding, Beatrice stammered, her hands fluttering to her throat. I would never say such things. I love both my granddaughters equally. The letter is quite detailed, the reporter continued. It mentions that Emma is, quote, sweet but simple, unlikely to amount to anything significant, while Meredith shows real promise worthy of investment. Beatrice looked around wildly, her gaze landing on me. I stood perfectly still, my face giving away nothing. Roger had disappeared behind the news van, either unable or unwilling to watch his plan unfold. I need to leave, Beatrice said, backing toward her car. This is a family matter, not news. But in her flustered state, her heel caught on the driveway's edge. She stumbled, her arms windmilling for balance, then fell hard onto the concrete. Her purse flew open, scattering its contents across the driveway, including several folded papers that the wind caught and spread like confession leaflets. One landed at the reporter's feet. She picked it up, her eyes widening as she read what appeared to be an email exchange between Beatrice and Roger about managing the Emma situation and maintaining Meredith's superiority in family standings. The news van left without airing anything that night. Turns out Roger had called them to do damage control, not knowing they'd already received my package of documents. He'd thought if he controlled the narrative with a feel-good story, it would overshadow whatever I might release. Instead, he'd handed them exclusive footage of his mother's complete meltdown in my driveway. The reporter gave me her card and said they'd be in touch if they decided to run a story on family dynamics and favoritism, but we both knew they wouldn't. This was too small, too personal, too messy for the 6 o'clock news. Beatrice left in an Uber, too shaken to drive, her Lincoln Town car abandoned in our driveway like a beached whale. Roger retrieved it the next morning at dawn, leaving the spare key in our mailbox without ringing the doorbell. He also left a check for $5,000 with Emma's birthday written in the memo line. Not the $25,000 Beatrice had announced, but enough to show they were taking this seriously. The party had continued after the chaos, but something fundamental had shifted in our backyard. The other parents rallied around Emma with a warmth that had nothing to do with obligation and everything to do with genuine affection. Mrs. Peterson ran home and returned with her grandmother's vintage tiara, a real silver piece with tiny diamonds that caught the light. A princess deserves a crown on her birthday, she declared, placing it gently on Emma's head. And not because of what you've done, sweetheart, but because of who you are. Mr. Chen, whose son Timothy was in Emma's class, turned out to be a hobby magician. He performed an impromptu magic show that had the kids shrieking with laughter. Mrs. Rodriguez taught everyone a traditional birthday song from Mexico that involved lots of clapping and spinning. By the time the sun started setting, Emma was laughing again, chocolate cake on her face from the Fratelli's cake Beatrice had brought, surrounded by friends who saw her value without needing a list of achievements. That evening, after the guests had gone home and the yard was cleaned up, Emma curled up beside me on the porch swing. The chains creaked gently as we swayed, watching fireflies begin their evening dance across the lawn. "Mom, why doesn't Grandma B love me like she loves Meredith?" she asked, her voice steady but curious, like she was trying to solve a math problem. I pulled her close, feeling the weight of her head against my shoulder. Sometimes adults forget that love isn't something you earn with trophies or grades or ribbons. It's something you give freely, without keeping score. Grandma B got confused about that. She thinks love is like a contest where someone has to win and someone has to lose. Emma nodded slowly, processing this. But that's not how love works. No, baby, it's not. Look what happened today after all that drama. Mrs. Peterson didn't know about your animal shelter volunteering when she brought you that tiara. Mr. Chen didn't need to see your report card before doing magic tricks. They just saw a little girl who deserved to feel special on her birthday. Mrs. Peterson said her grandma would have loved me, Emma said quietly. She said her grandma always told her that the best people are the ones who are kind when no one's keeping score. 2 weeks later, Beatrice sent a formal apology letter written on her expensive, monogrammed stationery. It was stiff and formal, probably drafted by a lawyer, but it included a check for Emma's college fund and legal documents establishing an irrevocable education trust. Dennis made sure our lawyer reviewed everything before we deposited the check. Beatrice hasn't been to our house since, though she sends cards on holidays, always addressed correctly now. Always with the same amount of money she sends Meredith. The unexpected gift in all of this came from Meredith herself. She called Emma the day after the party, having heard about everything from her father. "I didn't know Grandma was doing that," she said, and I could hear her crying over the phone. "You're my only cousin, Emma. We're supposed to be a team. Grandma's wrong about you. You're one of the best people I know." They text every week now, sharing jokes and TikTok videos, building a relationship separate from their grandmother's poisonous influence. Meredith even quit her student council campaign, telling her father she didn't want to win on a platform of kindness while her family practiced cruelty. Emma learned something valuable that day, something no amount of money in an education fund could have taught her. She learned that standing up for yourself doesn't require screaming or fighting dirty. Sometimes you just need one person willing to make the hard phone call, to hold others accountable, to refuse to let cruelty pass as acceptable behavior. She learned that real love doesn't keep score, doesn't demand performance, doesn't require you to earn your place at the table. The unicorn cake with Meredith's name? We kept it and ate it anyway. Emma decided it tasted even sweeter, knowing it was the cake that changed everything. She even saved the unicorn decoration, keeping it on her bookshelf next to Mrs. Peterson's tiara. To remember, she told me, that sometimes the worst things turn into the best things. And she's right, because the real gift wasn't the money Beatrice eventually provided or the apology she was forced to write. It was Emma learning that her worth has nothing to do with being compared to anyone else. She's enough, exactly as she is, volunteer hours or not, achievements or not, trophies or not. That's a lesson that will serve her far better than any trust fund ever could. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt like you weren't enough or watched someone you love feel that way, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below about a time when someone stood up for you or when you stood up for someone else. These stories matter, and your experiences matter. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories about families, justice, and the moments that change everything. Thank you for being here, for listening to Emma's story, and for being part of this community that believes every child deserves to be celebrated exactly as they are.